It started with the hum of the lights above, a faint, almost imperceptible buzz that danced with the low rumble of voices echoing off the marble walls. The committee room was too cold, as if someone had decided that truth needed refrigeration. Cameras blinked silently. The smell of burnt coffee, legal pads, and nervous sweat hung thick in the air. And behind the polished oak desk at the center sat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, her eyes steady, her jaw locked with quiet fire. She had come prepared, not just with facts and documents, though she had those in spades, but with something older, deeper. She carried her grandmother's faith, her father's hard-won lessons, the pain of watching her people misrepresented for generations, and the fierce, unshakable belief that words, when wielded right, could bend power, could shake rooms, could shut down the loudest voice in the room. And the loudest voice today would be Stephen Miller. Now, Miller wasn't supposed to be there in the way that he was. He had been invited to testify, sure, but like he always did, he saw the invitation not as a seat at the table, but as a chance to dominate it. The former senior advisor to a controversial presidency, Miller had carved a reputation out of interrupting out, talking and out, maneuvering his opponents with a smug cocktail of verbosity and venom. He believed deeply in his ability to shape the narrative, to bulldoze over nuance with sound bites sharp enough to trend. He hadn't met Jasmine in open combat before. Jasmine had been watching him for years. First from the quiet of law school, where she stayed up late watching hearings the way other people watched football. Then from the courtroom, defending clients whose names wouldn't make headlines, but whose lives depended on someone speaking truth with fire. And finally from the halls of Congress, where she walked daily in the shadow of giants, and slowly became one. She knew who Miller was. She knew the tricks, the interruptions, the condescension, the sharp-edged words wrapped in academic tones. But more importantly, she knew how it felt when voices like his went unchallenged. She remembered the nights growing up in Dallas, where her mother turned down the TV when politicians spoke about people like her family as if they were burdens, not citizens. That's why today mattered. She had rehearsed her questions, then rehearsed not using them, because she knew the real battle wouldn't be in policy details. It would be in posture, in patience, in presence. Miller would try to provoke her, control the tempo. But she wasn't here to argue, she was here to reveal. The hearing began with formalities, gavel strike, roll call, introductions, and then the questions started. The first came from a congressman across the aisle, a lobbed softball, a prescripted prompt that allowed Miller to launch into a well-rehearsed diatribe about national identity and cultural cohesion. His voice was calm, but you could hear the gears behind it, like a machine programmed to defend borders more fiercely than people. Then it was Jasmine's turn. She looked at him for a moment, longer than was comfortable, before speaking. "Mr. Miller," she said, voice like smooth iron, "do you believe that cruelty is an effective policy?" He smirked, like he always did when asked questions that poked at his intent rather than his data. "Congresswoman, I believe in the rule of law, and I believe that compassion without order is chaos." "I didn't ask about chaos," she interrupted, eyes narrowing slightly. "I asked if cruelty is your preferred method of governance." That was interrupt #1. He cut her off mid-sentence, scoffing. "If I may, Congresswoman, I think your question is loaded and inappropriate." "Let me reframe it for you." She leaned back, arms folded, unmoved. The room shifted. That set the tone. Over the next 10 minutes, he interrupted her 5 more times, each time more desperate than The last, each time trying to redirect, derail, dismiss. He leaned forward, talking over her. He accused her of bad faith. He pulled statistics from obscure think tanks. He appealed to the chair. He even tried a little condescension, saying, "You're clearly passionate, but perhaps not fully informed." The room grew tenser with each exchange. Staffers whispered, cameras zoomed in, a man in third row clutched his pen until it snapped. But Jasmine didn't raise her voice, not once. She let each interruption sit. Like an artist choosing the right brushstroke, she asked again, calmly, intelligently, and every time Miller grew more unmoored, and then came the seventh line. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, but it cut like a scalpel. Miller was mid-rant, gesturing broadly about immigration, about preserving American values, about dangerous cultural shifts. And Jasmine waited until he took the briefest breath. Then she said, "Mr. Miller, if the measure of American values is how we treat the vulnerable, then your legacy is not one of patriotism, but of profound moral failure. Silence, a long, hanging, breathless silence." Even Miller blinked, once, twice, as if the words had landed somewhere he hadn't armored. She didn't stop there. "I grew up in a neighborhood you wouldn't dare walk through. But I learned the Constitution better than you ever will. I've seen mothers deported for missing a court date while billionaires walk free after committing fraud. And the only cultural shift I see is people like me no longer asking for a seat at your table. We're building our own. And you're no longer invited." The chair tried to gavel, but no one moved. The weight of her words was too heavy to ignore. Even the cameras seemed to hum quieter. But here's what no one saw. What? The headlines didn't catch. Back in the hallway after the hearing, a janitor stopped her. An older black man, gray in his beard, mop in his hand. He didn't say much, just looked at her, eyes full of something unspoken. He gave her a nod, a quiet one, the kind passed between those who know the cost of keeping your dignity in rooms designed to strip it away. And back in her office, Jasmine sat alone for a few minutes, just breathing, because strength, the kind that stands calm under fire, doesn't come cheap. Meanwhile, Miller stormed out without making eye contact, and the clips began to circulate online. Millions watched, but the most powerful moment wasn't the takedown. It was the way she stood there, composed, grounded like a mountain in a storm. There were two subplots humming beneath that main exchange. One, back in her district, where a young high school debate team had been watching her hearings for weeks. They had idolized her, not because she was loud, but because she listened before speaking. They would later write her a letter thanking her for showing them that intelligence didn't mean cruelty. The other subplot lived in Miller's own world, where his own party, tired of the chaos, quietly began distancing themselves from his rhetoric. Some even cited that moment as a turning point. They wouldn't admit it publicly, but the silence said enough. Jasmine didn't win because she shouted. She didn't win because she was perfect. She won because she stood in the fire and didn't blink. Because the real battle isn't in the interruptions. It's in how you respond to them, with clarity, with calm, with conviction so deep it echoes beyond the room. In the end, the lesson wasn't just political, it was human, that when you're interrupted, when someone tries to erase your voice, the answer isn't to shout louder, it's to speak truer. And sometimes the seventh line is the one that lasts forever. Let me know if you'd like a version adapted for video production, complete with timing, B-roll suggestions, or narration cues.